This episode is sponsored by State Farm. Choices are great. Like with your podcasts, you get to choose what you want to listen to. And State Farm believes insurance should work the same way. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan helps you get the coverage you want at an affordable price and a policy that helps cover what you value most. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com today to create your State Farm Personal Price Plan. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
The all-new Chevy Colorado is made for more. Stacked with the latest in-vehicle technologies like a class-leading 11-inch diagonal center touchscreen and an extra-large wireless charging pad. Plus, it features wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to make staying connected easy wherever your adventure takes you. Chevy Colorado, made for more. Learn more at Chevrolet.com/truck/Colorado. Claims based on latest competitive data.
This is Optimal Health Daily, episode 2101, Hypertrophy Training, Rules to Live By When Muscle Hypertrophy is Your Goal, Part 1, by Deen of JCDFitness.com, and I'm Dr. Neil Malik, your host and narrator. Thanks so much for joining me once again, and today will be the start of one of our longer posts, which means I'll be splitting the reading up between today and tomorrow's episodes. So for now, let's get into the first part of this post and start optimizing your life. Hypertrophy Training, Rules to Live By When Muscle Hypertrophy is Your Goal, Part 1, by Deen of JCDFitness.com. Hypertrophy Training. In an untamed pursuit to build a better body and large muscles, which is what hypertrophy is all about, we're rarely concerned about the long term or how we plan to get from point A to point B. We simply want to experience a transformation. We want maximal muscle growth in minimal time, and will do anything to appear how we believe we're supposed to when gazing upon the reflection staring back at us. The pursuit may seem vain to many, but to those who can relate, it goes much deeper. The maximal muscle hypertrophy we desire is often a result of our competitive drive to reach new heights or the unconscious self-doubt, gasp, we impose upon ourselves. Sure, for some, it's pure vanity, and that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with a little textbook narcissism now and again. However, to understand something fully, we sometimes must start at the end result and work backward. Therefore, to better understand hypertrophy training, in this case from an anecdotal standpoint, we're going to look at a few trainees who have made major strides despite slightly different training philosophies and approaches. Thou shalt get strong. Despite what anyone tells you, for the most part, strength is going to equal size. As we gain upon the masters of bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, and the popular sports such as American football that require an athlete to be very strong, it's easy to see that maximal strength usually means an increase in muscle hypertrophy. Don't believe me? Have a look at Martin Burkhan, Tommy Jeffers, Lane Norton, Dave Gullidge, or any other athlete with great strength. All these guys are incredibly strong and thus possess remarkable physiques. One should also note how their training differs. While it's obvious when looking at their programming that Tommy and Lane are focused on hypertrophy training, Dave Gullidge's focus is primarily strength-oriented, and Martin's training preference seems to be fairly low volume, which is rarely looked upon as hypertrophy training. A look at some hypertrophy training programs. I've covered a few of these already, but I feel it's necessary to discuss them in this context to do this article justice. Low volume hypertrophy training. DC training is a good example here. The concept of DC is simple: low volume, heavy weights, and continuous improvement. The training template focuses on 3 training sessions per week. Exercise selection is varied from session to session, but the layout is fairly minimal. This program is primarily focused on producing muscle hypertrophy via strength gains on any given movement. Another example is the high-intensity or HIIT training made popular with the help of Ellington Darden. Mike Mentzer also contributed to its popularity, but it's hard to say whether or not he truly followed the HIIT routines or if he was just involved in promoting them. Many say he built his frame using a more conventional approach and merely maintained his physique with the HIIT methods. With this type of hypertrophy training, one might do a max set of squats once per week or every 10 days. The same applies to other movements as well. HIIT training, in my opinion, is not suitable for many, as it's often difficult for most individuals to stay out of the gym. Plus, most aren't going to see the results they're after, like they might if they followed a routine with more volume and a higher frequency. Moderate volume hypertrophy training. Lyle McDonald's bulking routine is a good example of this. With these programs, you've normally got 2 to 3 movements per body part for a frequency of a few times per week. This type of hypertrophy training spans over 3 to 4 days, depending on your personal preferences and recovery ability. Another example is splitting up your training into limb and core days. On the limb days, you train legs and arms, and on core days, you train chest, shoulders, and back. I've done this type of training for a long time. You can opt for a 3-day version, set up like the DC template, or the 4-day version in a similar fashion as Lyle's routine. For each muscle group respectively, you pick 2 movements and perform 2 to 4 sets of 3 to 12 reps. The rep range is dependent on how you periodize it. With this type of training, your arms are getting hit directly and indirectly 4 times per week. This is not a problem as long as you keep the training volume moderate and you manage the intensity. When compared to DC or other low-volume training methods, this type of program puts an emphasis on steady progression with each movement with some added volume. Low-frequency, high-volume hypertrophy training. Just about any of the popular 5 to 7 day splits you discovered in your favorite muscle magazine will fall under this category. While this training has its place for a select few individuals, I never recommend it to the average trainee. I've seen and read about too many people doing such routines with little to no results to speak of. Many of the mass monsters can get away with training like this for 2 reasons. One is the fact that they are very advanced and require a stimulus that only heavy weights plus a ton of volume can provide. And the other reason is that many of them are pharmaceutically assisted. When drugs enter the game, the rules become skewed. Moderate to higher frequency, moderate volume hypertrophy training. These are training programs that have you in the gym 3 to 6 times per week with varied intensities and volume. HST is a great example of this training in effect. With HST, you train full body every other day. The idea behind it is to take advantage of recovery and peaks in protein synthesis. The frequency in this regard is fairly aggressive, with each body part getting hit 3 times per week. It's completely doable due to the loading protocol and built-in periodization Brian Haycock recommends to succeed on the program. One more way of approaching a higher frequency program is to train 6 times per week in an upper-lower split, or, for more volume, push, pull, and legs. While many won't be able to make such a commitment, if set up correctly, this type of training can be very productive. Productive in this sense assumes that the individual knows and understands how to moderate their intensity and volume in a sensible and practical manner. Rest-pause hypertrophy training. While DC training is a form of rest-pause training, it's not the only way of getting the hypertrophy training effect. With DC training, one goes to failure on each respective set. With other rest-pause style training, one doesn't have to go to failure if the desire is non-existent. I've had a few email conversations with Borj Fajrli of myorevolution.no, as well as read many of his forum posts about rest-pause training. His method of training has become known to a select few fitness-obsessed folks as myo-reps. He also discusses auto-regulation, which I'm having a lot of success experimenting with. Eventually, I plan to write about my personal anecdotal discoveries pertaining to auto-regulation training. Another addition to this rest-pause method for muscle hypertrophy can be found at wannabebig.com. The name they gave their program is HCT12. For rest-pause training with a little bit of auto-regulation thrown into the mix, one can experience shorter, more efficient training bouts. My time is precious. Therefore, when I have the chance to cut down on training time, I do it. A look at some strength training programs. Hear that on tomorrow's episode. You just listened to part 1 of the post titled Hypertrophy Training, Rules to Live By When Muscle Hypertrophy is Your Goal by JC Deen of JCDFitness.com. We all have someone who has genuinely impacted our lives for the better. And if you're a business owner, you need to hire the same type of person for your company. Now, it's easy to find that perfect employee thanks to Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform helping over 3 million businesses worldwide to do it all. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates. Over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates the moment they sponsor a job. I especially love Indeed's Instant Match feature because candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. Indeed knows that finding people with the right skills makes all the difference when you're a hiring team of one. Visit Indeed.com/health to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/health. Indeed.com/health. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Start your countdown to the most delicious Sunday of the year at Whole Foods Market. The Easter in Bloom event is on. Experience it in stores from March 29th through April 11th with irresistible deals and delights store-wide. Save on feast-worthy animal welfare certified meats like spiral cut ham and boneless ribeye. Then add a flash of green to the scene with savings on organic asparagus. Too busy to cook? Don't sleep on their crowd favorite catering. Find all of that plus Source for Good floral bouquets and more at your local Whole Foods Market.
Dr. Neal here for my commentary. I really appreciate that JC is discussing different approaches to training for hypertrophy, which is basically a fancy way of saying building large muscles, by the way. I also like that JC is clear that much of what he is sharing is anecdotal, meaning this information isn't necessarily backed by formal research. Instead, it's based on experience. I've shared my experiences with strength training many times before, like when I talk about how I just couldn't get my shoulder muscles to grow as quickly as some of my other muscles. This led to some unnamed family members telling me that my shoulders look small and out of proportion to the rest of my body. Or when I was told by some unnamed family members that my chest looks exactly the same as it did 7 years ago, even though I had spent a lot of time training my chest in what I thought a very difficult high volume way. Anywho, part of the reason this may have happened was because of the way I was training. I was following the low-frequency, high-volume hypertrophy style of training that JC mentioned. He said that he has seen too many people using this routine with little to no results to speak of. Well, he could add me to that list. In my younger days, I would read those very same muscle magazines and follow many of their workouts, hoping to look as big as the guys in the photos. But it never seemed to happen. Eventually, I woke up and tried different training methods. I can't say that I instantly found the one that worked for me. That's because it took me another 5, 6, 7 years of experimenting and consistency to find what did work for me. And even then, once you have found that routine that seems to be giving you the results you were after, at some point you're going to plateau. So you're going to need to mix things up again to continue stimulating muscle growth. But we'll discuss that more tomorrow. So that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for listening today and every day. I'll be back here tomorrow to finish up this post, so I'll see you there where your optimal life awaits.